Welcome back, everyone. Well, you know, some of us grow up in a musical household. That means that mom may sing in the kitchen or dad may be playing the instrument someplace. But if you're my guest, the chances are when you woke up in the morning and you wandered into the living room, there's Dave Brubeck playing piano. Jerry Mulligan might be walking around. Maybe Paul Desmond's having a cup of coffee. If you don't know who I'm talking about, you have to look this up, because we're talking about one of the seminal jazz artists of all times, Dave Brubeck. And this is Chris Brubeck, one of his sons, and an amazing musical family. You've got brothers who play and all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, 4 out of 6 of my siblings became professional musicians.
That's unbelievable. We've got a lot to cover here, so we're actually going to do 2 parts on this. The primary reason Chris is here is because he's going to, with his quartet, quintet, is going to be guest with the Glens Falls Symphony Orchestra for a very special concert that they're doing to honor our veterans on November 8th in Glens Falls. And we're going to talk about that and part 2, actually. But I got to go back and just talk about your history a bit, okay? It's just too fascinating. So when did you realize at a young age that maybe you were around geniuses?
Oh, well, I think that's too strong a word, but my dad realized that I had a really good musical ear. And he said that he wanted me to start taking piano lessons when I was 5. And actually, even then, I was smart enough to say, man, you've got the piano covered. I don't want to play piano, too. But he said, I want you to play piano because I don't care if you're the best piano player in the world, but you'll learn how to read treble clef, you'll learn how to read bass clef, you'll learn how to notate rhythms, and those are the tools you need if you ever want to become a composer. And he was right, because I became a composer. And there's something that my dad, who became a composer, had to really struggle with all that kind of stuff. You know, later in life, he learned all the notation things, because he was such a great ear player.
Right.
That he actually got through conservatory and music school, and when they came to the final exam, only then, when they all thought he was the most brilliant musician they'd ever had, that they realized he could hardly read. And they were going to kick him out, and there was this big faculty meeting, and finally the compromise is, we'll graduate you, but you have to promise to never teach music. Because you're unqualified.
So not only did he go on, but you know, you're talking about the great jazz players across, of course, are great improvisational players.
Yeah.
And there's a seminal album, 1959, called Time Out, even before my time. Time Out, that contained a song called Take 5. It broke all kinds of ground and history because it was a song in the signature of 5/4, which was really foreign to a lot of ears, which is now commonplace.
Yeah.
And of course, then the Dave Brubeck quartet went on to produce Time Further Out, Time and Space, which I think was a tribute to John Glenn, the astronaut, right? And exploring signatures as far-fetched as 13/4. I don't even know what that is. Okay. Did you ever play in 13/4?
Oh, I've played in weirder ones. My brother Darius and his group, you know, we got into some really crazy things.
I can't believe it. Where'd you go to school, Chris?
I went to Wilton, Connecticut public, schools as a kid, and then I went to a place called Interlochen Arts Academy, which was a special music school. I went there because I was the last kid cut from the public basketball team, and I said, if I can't play basketball, damn, I guess I'll go into this music thing deeper. And that was fantastic because I was surrounded by these really gifted kids. I call them, mutants. They were just so skilled. They ended up being like heading jazz at Lincoln Center or Lincoln Center Chamber Works. They're really well-known guys these days. In fact, they're all getting old enough that they could be retiring now. But
well, you want to know something? You're in that league. Now you're multi-instrumentalist. You play trombone, which I think is a fascinating instrument and incredibly difficult to play. But you also play piano, correct? And you move around.
Yeah, and actually I spend the most time playing electric fretless bass.
You do?
Because I spent years playing in Dave's group, too. And I grew up hearing Gene Wright, the great bass player, and his what we call the classic quartet with Paul Desmond and Joe Morello. So that was sort of my aesthetic. What does a bass player do? This is like pre-Jaco Pastorius, like more of a meat and potatoes kind of bass player. In a jazz group, it's really the bass player. He's sort of like the catcher on a baseball team. He keeps track of the function and is feeding everyone the harmonic structure of the tune, and actually has a little less freedom than the drummer even to do crazy things. But you have to have a certain kind of personality, like to be a catcher, to be a bass player, to want to do that, to sort of anchor a group.
Boy, right. Not only is they always say the bass player's foundation, but it's the personality. You know, where they decide to go. You mentioned Jocko, of course, he's a legendary fretless electric bass player.
Yeah.
And broke all kinds of ground there. Hey, you're a composer.
Yeah.
And to your credit, you have a long list of compositions, but one that struck me was that you had done an orchestral piece with orchestra for trombone, which I found absolutely fascinating. If you can play the trombone that good. So tell me about that.
Well, one thing, if you're the composer, you're writing to your strengths.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's certain things that I can do, you know, really well, and certain things like, for example, I'm not one of these guys that is a great tonguer. You know, you know, and there's other guys who go, you know. So, you know, I didn't push myself in that direction, but I have a really good low range, and for a bass trombone player, a very good high range too. So I wrote stuff. You know, sometimes I'm playing and I go like, "Gosh, damn, this composer! Why? Oh, it was me." Yeah, and then I'll talk to the best bass trombone players in the world, and they'll say, "Man, you know, I wish you'd put in more breaths, or it's too high, you know, or whatever, you know." So, but my attitude coming from a jazz background, like when they have cadenzas and stuff, I said, look, you know, I wrote this cadenza because it makes me sound good with the skills that I have. You know, none of us is a perfect player. We all have strengths and weaknesses. I said, I don't mind. You make up some of your own stuff in the cadenza that shows off what you got. That's what the cadenza is about. You're supposed to impress the audience. So the people, and fortunately for me, besides a lot of professional bass trombone players playing this, a lot of kids in college will play it for the recitals and stuff.
Oh, nice.
And every week I get, can you please send me the music, and I want to do this. And I always write, no, go ahead. You can change some things to fit your playing and your embouchure. It won't bother me at all. I'm a jazz cat, you know. I know what it's like.
What was it like? Now, I think one of the pieces that we were talking about before we went on air, you premiered with the Czech Philharmonic?
Yeah,
Yes.
That was my second trombone concerto.
Okay.
I had played my first one with them, and they really enjoyed that collaboration. They said, hey, why don't you come back, write a new trombone concerto, and we'll record it at the same time that you're over here. And so we did all those things, and I just played it. It's harder than my first one, because of course you're trying to not repeat yourself. And,
Yes.
but I'm still getting through them, you know.
You know what I love that you said before you went on air is that, you know, you'll write something 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And let's face it, we get a little bit older, our ability to control our breath changes a little bit or something, and all of a sudden you find yourself playing a piece that you wrote,
Right.
wondering how you're going to get through it.
Right, absolutely. But I also said it's like an old baseball pitcher. You may lose a little velocity, but you're more clever about certain other things, you know, to make it all come off. So it's a big challenge, you know. It's a little bit terrifying, and then you go, I still got it. I got through that. I got a standing ovation. People loved it, you know. So it's like then you're renewed to go out and. Probably time to write a third trombone concerto now.
Wow, I got it. Chris, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. We're going to part one and part two this because we want to talk about why Chris is here with his quintet and what they're going to perform with Charles Peltz and the Glens Falls Symphony Orchestra. So if you just sit tight, we're going to take a break and then we're going to part two.
Okay, it's cool with me.
Thanks.
Sure.
To see this interview again, you can head to our website, looktvonline.com.